Welcome to the No Limits Podcast, where limits do not exist, where you can create cash flow, equity, and real freedom with the power of real estate.
3, 4. Now, we will begin.
Welcome to the Dojo. How to beat a funk in business. That's the topic of today's show. This is Todd Toback, and welcome to the No Limits Real Estate Investing Podcast. If this is the first time you're listening to the show, or you have not been to our website, head on over to nolimitsrealestateinvesting.com, and I've got a gift there for you. It's the No Limits Wholesaling Map, the Massive Action Plan. And whether you are trying to do your first deal, you're trying to quit your job, or you're trying to build a seven-figure business that operates without you and throws off cash month after month after month, this is the exact system that I use to build a seven-figure real estate business, and it's the exact system that you can use too. So make sure you head on over to nolimitsrealestateinvesting.com and download the map today. So I'm going to begin today's episode with a story, because most of these shows that I put on are from real experiences, real pain that I've experienced, and these have been growth opportunities. And so you are going to save 20 years of pain and knowledge and growth, hopefully, by listening to these shows. So this is just real stuff on the street. So a couple of weeks ago, I had one of my acquisition specialists come to me and say, "Oh, Todd, you know, the leads, they just suck, right? It's dry out there. The market's changing. I don't know what we're going to do. We've got to change markets. You know, this is just not working." And I've heard this movie before, right? I've seen this before. I've heard many, many people say this. I've heard many students say this. I've had private clients say this. I've even experienced this myself. And I can tell you that it's almost always BS. There is a phenomenal scene in the movie Glenn Ross, and there's a salesperson in that movie, and basically a sales manager, and the salesperson says, "These leads suck," and then the manager looks over at the sales rep and he says, "No, you suck." And it's funny because at that moment I felt like telling my acquisition specialist he sucked, but cooler heads prevailed. And I thought, man, let me take my learning experience here. Let me, be a strong leader. Let me pass along my knowledge here and develop this person. And this is one of the things that I've learned about business, right? Is that you want to pour into your people. You want to invest in your people. And of course, you have to start by leading yourself and investing in yourself. But when you have a team, these are the most valuable assets that you have. As a matter of fact, I tell all of my private one-on-one coaching clients to obviously hire the right people and invest in them. And if you are interested, by the way, in private one-to-one coaching and you're already doing deals and you want to make more money in less time, you can head on over to nolimitsrealestateinvesting.com/private, nolimitsrealestateinvesting.com/private. Just heads up right now, there is a wait list. All right, so let me jump right back into, our mindset. And so, I went back and I said, okay, well, let's get rid of the drama, right? That's one of our core values, by the way, data, not drama. We trust our guts, but we always verify with the facts, right? So I pulled up a spreadsheet and we start looking at the leads for the last 3 weeks. And I said, yeah, look, we've had the same amount of leads every single week. We really haven't changed the marketing here. And he's like, no, it's just different. The leads are cold. I can tell you there's nothing here. I said, all right. I said, well, why don't we go over every single lead and start looking at stuff? And so I've got a process in our business where we go back and we look over our top 20 hot and warm leads. These are people who have called into the company, and for whatever reason, we weren't able to close them on the spot, but they have a problem, a situation, a timeline, and it is brewing, right? And this is the case in any sales organization. So I said, let's pull them up. I said, are all of your hot and warms, are they organized? Are they highly targeted? Do you know what your next step is? And he says, yes. So we pull them up, and all of a sudden I look at the first one and I said, okay, what's the story here? And he's like, well, this person we're going to meet on next week. And I'm looking in the notes And I said, well, what do you mean? I don't see anything in the notes. What was the commitment? What did you guys agree to? What did he say that he was going to do in between now and then, okay, to help him make a decision, right? And then what are you going to do between now and then, right? You have to get a firm grip on your next step. He's thinking in his head, I don't know, this is not the problem. So then we go to the second lead, and all of a sudden he's like, oh, well, this guy, he's not hot or warm anymore. He's cold. I said, okay, well, how come it's still labeled hot or warm? And he's like, well, I just forgot to change it. So then he changes it to cold. Third lead comes in, and he's like, oh yeah, this guy sold his property, right? And said, okay. I said, okay, well, how come you didn't update that into the CRM? So the fourth one I look in and I don't see a strong commitment there. What I mean about a commitment is at the end of every call when you talk to a seller, there should be a very next action that needs to happen, right? Something that you do, something that you agree to do, and something that the seller agrees to do to help them make the very next step, right? We never push a seller to do business with us, but we do push them to their decision, right? We have them identify their very next step in the process. We have them state it. We repeat it back to them. We write it in the CRM, right? And then get that in writing, and we put it down in our CRM, right? Our customer relationship management, our computer program. And by the way, when I say we get it in writing, we write it down, right? We're not holding them accountable to their commitments, in writing along the sales process, but we write it down so it's rock solid, along with that very, very next appointment to talk to, right? You're keeping the line tight. And I said, frankly, you haven't identified your hot and warms. There aren't strong commitments here. And I understand why the leads have gone cold. And he's like, you don't understand. The leads have changed. And I said, well, listen, I said, the one thing that I can control and you can control are your daily habits, right? So you can control what you do in the CRM. You control how you talk to sellers. You can control how you organize your day. You control how many offers you make and how many calls you make, right? And I said, and look, your calls normally you make about 60 a day, and really you've been averaging about 48. And he's like, so you're telling me the difference is I've been making 48 calls and you want me to make 60. I could say, I don't know if that's it, right? But again, we can only control what we can control, right? And so you've got to take a look at, are you doing what you are supposed to do day in and day out? Because it's a combination of things. In the military, there's a reason why they have you make your bed and they have you have an organized footlocker, right? Everything in its place, right? A place for everything and everything in its place, because we can't control if the enemy is going to attack you in the middle of the night, right? Or if planes are going to come and bomb you overnight, but you can control, right? If all of a sudden you're caught by surprise, can you put on your boots? Can you grab your gun? Can you grab your jacket? Can you grab your equipment? Do you know where all that is? And that's something that is in your control and how you can react. And that can be life or death. And so that one deal in your business, right? If you're on top of those leads and you're making a 40 or a 50K pop on that, that one little thing that you may not be doing on a consistent basis or that you get away from can cost you a huge deal. So I sat there with my acquisition specialist and I said, listen, I said, let's refocus here, right? I want you to get back to 60 calls a day. I want you to be sending out an offer. I want you to focus on these top 20, keep the hots hot, right? If something is not hot anymore, you take it out, you decide, right? But let your yes be yes and your no be no, right? And you make that decision. Don't tell me this is sold or this should be cold if this is labeled otherwise. Control it, right? And of course, he was really skeptical. And so he says, okay, I'm going to do it. I got that commitment. So he calls me back the next day and he goes, Todd, I'm doing what you're telling me and I can tell you the leads are cold. So I took a deep breath and I said, listen, I said, from what I'm looking at, the last 2 or 3 weeks, you have not been doing any of this, right? So what it's going to take is momentum, right? It's going to take momentum that you're going to have to gain back for you to start to see that momentum. So if you kind of took off 2 or 3 weeks in doing these little things that made a difference, it's going to take at least 2 or 3 weeks to gain back that momentum, at least 2 or 3 weeks. So long story short, I said, just go to the process. Now, as a leader, you have to have your team's back, right? So I said to him, look, I will go over the leads with our marketing director and make sure that A, you're getting enough leads, and we will review our source to see if anything has changed. And that's my commitment to you. But you hold your commitments too and just do this for 2 weeks. Long story short, yesterday we got 2 contracts. This was two weeks ago. Yesterday we got 2 contracts. One of them was a seller who we just mailed out an offer to, right? Part of our process. He signed it, sent it back to the escrow company, and that's going to be about a $27,000 pop. And another one, which our acquisition specialist was able to nurture to close, and that's going to be about a $30,000 deal, right? $57,000 basically from quote unquote bad leads. So, what is the purpose of today's episode? What is the lesson? Number one is that you have to control what you can control. There's a certain set of skills that you have to do day after day after day. And if you do these things, I promise you, you are going to have a flourishing business. If you're trying to do your first deal, or you're trying to get enough courage or money to quit your job from this business, or if you're trying to build that 7-figure business, there is a core set of habits that have to happen day after day after day after day after day after day. It is boring, it is dull, but I'm telling you, the boring stuff will make you rich. I'm going to repeat that. The boring stuff will make you rich. It's not the hot new marketing channel. It's not the hot new market. It's not the hot new strategy, right? It is the boring stuff day after day after day after day. So number one is that make sure your marketing goes out week after week after week, okay? In spite of you. If you can't discipline yourself to do this, make sure that you have a virtual assistant to help you, okay? Number two is organize your hot and warm leads every single day, your top 20. Your hot and warm leads, this is something I talk about in the No Limits selling system, right? And if you want to know more about that, you can go to nolimitsalessystem.com. But you must organize your hot and warm leads every single day. The people who have a problem, a situation, something brewing, people who are qualified and raise their hand and say, yes, I'm interested in doing business. Maybe they're not ready today, but maybe they're ready in 30, 60, 90 days, maybe even 6 months. But you are identifying these every single day, and you know that very next step. Get a commitment from the seller of what they agree to do and what you agree to do. And if you can't get a commitment from them, okay, if they're being vague or squirrely and you tried multiple different ways, then at the very least, set a strong commitment of what you will do next. Very, very, very important. So, for example, I had a seller that one of my acquisition specialists was dealing with, and the seller just went ghost on him. So I said, okay, great. I said, you've tried calling them and they're not returning your calls. So I said, have you sent them a video? No. Have you knocked on the door? No. Right? Have you sent them a FedEx envelope? No. Right? I said, I don't care what it is. You decide, but put that in there, right? And then build on the next step so you know what your plan of action is. It's not a random act. Okay, number three, make sure your call volume is up, right? If you are by yourself and you are a solopreneur, right, you got to be making at least 60 calls a day, right? And that takes 3 hours to do. Now, obviously, if you have a job and you only have 1 hour and you're making 20 calls, fine. But if you are, really trying to attack this, you got to be making 60 calls a day. And if you have people underneath you and you're hiring people, obviously you don't have to be making 60 calls a day, but your people should be making a minimum of 60 calls a day, day after day after day. And those people, again, should be getting commitments. Next is you got to be sending out offers to everyone who's not on your hot and warm list. I don't care if you are $100,000 off on price, $200,000 off in price. Earlier in the episode, I talked about a deal that we just got back at the escrow company. And I could tell you that we were $80K off on the price. The seller had no motivation, or at least they sounded like they didn't have any motivation. And just because that little pop, that one little offer that went out the door, right? We had a virtual assistant prepare it and send it in the mail. Guess what? We got it accepted, and that's a $25K plus deal. I think I said it's going to be about $27,000. Hasn't closed yet, but it's in escrow or title or the closing process or with the attorney, or however, whatever you call that in your state. Okay. Very, very, very important. Next step, pull a call. Okay. Hopefully you are recording your phone calls and your incoming phone calls, by the way, make sure that you tell the sellers that the phone call is being recorded. So just have a casual message. This call is being recorded for quality and training purposes, and say it in a very casual voice. And by the way, it's a recording during the ring. So don't make a big deal about it. And the sellers have no problem with this, right? But I recommend pulling one call every single week. And if you've got an assistant, then have them look into the recording phone system that you use and pull a call that's longer than 10 minutes, right? And have them hand it to you. Don't hand pick it. Hit play and listen to it, right? And coach yourself. I guarantee you, you are going to find something that you need to change every single week. Okay. If you just do this for 20 minutes, guess what? 52 times 20, you have listened to a tremendous amount of calls now that you could coach yourself or coach one of your cold callers or coach one of your acquisition specialists, but you are going to get better. That I promise you. And as you build your team, right, you can get lots of pieces of input and learn from everybody. And by the way, one of the things that I include in the no limit selling system is that we actually have recorded calls of my team, right? Going out there and talking to sellers and me critiquing those, right? And people who have the system just absolutely love that. And then I've also actually done some role plays with my team. So do that with your own team, by the way. Obviously, if you're not haven't invested in the system, do that with your own team. Listen to your own calls. I'm telling you, it is a total, absolute game changer. And if you want to know more about the sales system, go to nolimitsalesystem.com. All right. And then the other part about this, and this is very, very, very important, is that if you've had bad habits or you haven't been implementing these things, understand that it takes time to build momentum. In the back of my office wall, the back rear wall, there are three things. It's called the Big Mo. And I've mentioned this before, but there is a rocket ship. There is a old school water pump, those things that go into the ground. It's got that big long lever and you pump. And then there is a locomotive. And they're giant three posters and it says the Big Mo, right? The big momentum. So what do these three things have in common? Well, all three of these things take a ton of energy to get going. I'm talking a ton of energy, right? Where it's expending, either a ton of fuel or a ton of arm power or, that giant locomotive steam engine where it's like, choo, 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 choo. And when you start doing these things, you see nothing, right? When that locomotive starts, there is no movement whatsoever. And when you pump, there's no water. And that rocket ship, you see all those flames and there's nothing. And that's not when most people quit because they know that they have to see some movement. When most people quit is when they see a little bit of movement, right? Where they're pumping that pump and they see a little bit of water and they're like, wow, I'm pumping so hard and I just see this little bit of water. Well, little do they know that if they just keep pumping, if they just keep doing the right things day in and day out, they better watch out. Because momentum is coming. And when you've got momentum, you can't be stopped. So when you hit the funk, when you hit the doubt or the fear or a gap in revenue, first look back and say, where have my habits gone awry? Was it my marketing? Was it my sales? Was it my mindset? Was it my offers? Was it my sales process, right? My commitments, whatever it is. Find out what it is. I guarantee it's there. Smell out the culprit like a bloodhound. Then go and completely destroy the culprit. Fix it, put in those habits. Okay, after a couple of weeks, I promise you, your momentum is coming back in a big way and you can't stop this freight train. All right, let's destroy the funk together. So I hope you enjoyed today's show. If you have not been to the website, go there and download the map, the massive action plan. Again, if you're trying to do that first deal or trying to quit your job, or you're trying to build that 7-figure business that operates without you, guess what? This is the blueprint that will take you there. And this is my free gift to you. If you have not shared the show, please download or please copy and paste, the link wherever you consume the content and share it with 3 or more of your friends who you think need to hear it. Talk to you soon.